The moon hung low and silver over the desert as Jacob walked alone by the riverbank. The campfires behind him had gone quiet. Everyone slept. Everyone slept. His heart beat fast. His hands trembled. He was going to meet his brother Esau at sunrise, the brother he had tricked years ago. Would Esau still be angry? Could this night change everything? The wind whispered across the water as Jacob knelt to pray. "Lord," he whispered, "please protect me." Suddenly, from the shadows, a strong figure stepped forward, a man glowing faintly in the moonlight. Jacob froze. The man said nothing. Then, without warning, he grabbed Jacob's shoulder. The two struggled, feet sliding in the sand, hands locked in a powerful grip. Was this a man? Or something more? Jacob's breath came hard as the night deepened. The stars shimmered above them, watching the fight below. Jacob didn't know it yet, but before dawn, he would meet God face to face and never be the same again. The night deepened, and the river whispered louder as the two figures wrestled. Jacob's strength began to fade, but he refused to let go. Every muscle burned, yet his heart shouted, "I will not give up." The stranger's eyes gleamed with calm power, every move measured and strong. Jacob's feet dug into the sand, his breath ragged, his robe torn. What was he fighting for? His life, his guilt, or his future? The mysterious man said nothing, only pressed harder. Jacob's thoughts flashed with memories. The trick he played on his brother, the running, the fear. Was this his punishment? Or was it something deeper, a test? The stars above seemed to lean closer, as if watching the struggle between heaven and man. And still, Jacob clung to his opponent, refusing to fall. Suddenly, the mysterious man touched Jacob's hip, and pain shot through him like lightning. He cried out, stumbling. But even then he did not let go. The pain was sharp, yet something inside him was stronger than fear. He held on with trembling arms and shouted, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." His voice echoed across the river, startling a flock of birds that rose into the dawn sky. The angel looked into Jacob's eyes and for the first time spoke softly, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob, panting and weak, whispered again, "Not until you bless me." In that moment, the struggle became something more, not of strength, but of spirit. The angel's voice carried both power and peace as he asked, "What is your name?" Jacob, gasping for breath, answered, "Jacob." The name itself felt heavy. It meant the one who grasps or the deceiver. The angel paused, then said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and have overcome." A hush fell over the land. Jacob's heart pounded as he realized what had just happened. He had wrestled through the night, through pain and fear, and now he stood face to face with a messenger of God. The first light of morning touched the horizon, painting the sky gold. The wind calmed. The river quieted. The angel looked at Jacob one last time and said, "You are blessed." Then, as the first sunbeam touched the river, the angel vanished into light. Jacob fell to his knees, his hip aching, his eyes filled with tears, but not of pain. They were tears of joy and wonder. He had met God in the night and lived. "I have seen God face to face," he whispered, "and my life is spared." When he stood, the sun rose behind him, golden and bright, and Jacob limped forward toward his family. Each step hurt, but every step carried a blessing. He didn't know it yet, but this night would forever mark him as Israel, the one who wrestled with God and overcame. The sun climbed higher, painting the sky in pink and gold. Jacob walked slowly, limping on his wounded hip. Every step reminded him of the night before. The touch of God, the new name, the promise. His camp came into view, his wives and children waiting with worried eyes. They had heard the sounds of his cries in the night but dared not go near. When they saw him limping, his children ran toward him. "Father, what happened?" asked one of his sons. Jacob smiled weakly and said, "I saw God last night, and he blessed me." The family looked at him in awe, but as the morning wind swept across the valley, Jacob's eyes turned toward the east. Esau was coming. Jacob gathered his family and servants. "Esau, my brother, is coming with 400 men," he said quietly. The children gasped, and Rachel's hand trembled in his. But Jacob's eyes no longer held fear. They held peace. He arranged his family carefully, the servants first, then Leah and her children, then Rachel and Joseph last. He looked at the gifts he had prepared for Esau: goats, camels, sheep, and donkeys. "Go ahead of me," Jacob told his servants, "and when Esau meets you, say, 'Your servant Jacob sends this gift.'" His voice was calm now. The man who once ran from his past was now walking toward it, blessed, limping, but brave. The desert road stretched wide before them. Jacob led the way, leaning slightly on his staff, his shadow long against the sand. Each step brought him closer to Esau, closer to forgiveness. The wind carried the bleating of goats and the soft thud of hooves. Jacob whispered a prayer. "Lord, you have blessed me. Now give me courage." Behind him, the line of animals and servants shimmered in the heat. In the distance, a cloud of dust began to rise. Esau's men were approaching. The moment Jacob had feared all his life was finally here. Jacob's heart pounded as he saw the riders in the distance. Esau rode at the front, broad-shouldered, bearded, fierce. For years, Jacob had pictured this moment ending in anger. He bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached, each bow slower than the last. The sound of horses stopped. Esau dismounted, his face unreadable. Then, in a flash of emotion, Esau ran forward, not with a sword, but with open arms. He threw them around Jacob and wept. Jacob wept too. The brothers clung to each other, their tears falling into the dust. The fear melted away like morning mist. God had turned their pain into peace. Jacob looked into Esau's eyes and said, "Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God." Esau laughed through his tears. "Brother," he said, "what are all these gifts you sent?" Jacob replied, "They are for you, so that I may find favor in your sight." But Esau shook his head. "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have." The two smiled, their hearts lighter than they had ever been. They walked together toward Jacob's camp, the sun shining on their path. The blessing Jacob received in the night had found its true meaning: peace, forgiveness, and love between brothers. The air was still and bright the next morning. The sound of laughter filled the camp for the first time in years. Children played near the flocks, while Jacob and Esau sat together under a fig tree, sharing bread. The brothers spoke of old memories. The day Jacob traded stew for the birthright, the long years apart. Esau's hearty laugh filled the valley, and Jacob's smile grew wide. For the first time, he felt truly free. As the wind moved through the trees, Jacob whispered to himself, "The Lord has been with me all along." His heart stirred with thankfulness, and a new idea began to form. He would build an altar to honor the God who never left him. Nay, as the sun climbed high, Jacob gathered his family. "Come," he said. "Let us build an altar to the Lord who answered me in my distress." His children's eyes widened as they listened. They watched their father lift stones with his strong, scarred hands, stacking them carefully one by one. Each stone seemed to tell a story of fear, forgiveness, and faith. Rachel smiled gently and said, "You have wrestled with both men and angels, my husband, but now you kneel before the Lord." Jacob nodded, his heart full. "Yes," he said softly, "He is my strength." By afternoon, the altar stood tall and strong, built from 12 stones, one for each of Jacob's sons. He poured oil on the top stone, letting it flow like liquid light. "This place shall be called El Elohe, Israel," he declared. "God, the God of Israel." The family bowed their heads in silence. A gentle wind swept through the camp, and the air felt full of something holy. Jacob lifted his eyes toward the sky and whispered, "You blessed me, Lord, when I did not deserve it. You turned my fear into faith." That evening, the family gathered by the altar. The sky glowed orange and purple as the sun set. Jacob's sons sat in a circle, their eyes fixed on him. "Children," Jacob said, "God does not bless us because we are strong. He blesses us because we hold on to him, even in our weakness." The children listened quietly. Little Joseph leaned forward and asked, "Father, were you afraid when you wrestled the angel?" Jacob smiled gently. "Yes," he said, "but courage is not the absence of fear. It is holding on to God when you are afraid." His words sank deep into their hearts like seeds of faith. As night fell, the stars covered the sky like jewels. The camp was quiet. Jacob knelt once more before the altar. "Thank you, Lord," he prayed, "for changing my name, for changing my heart, for bringing peace to my family." The wind stirred his robe as if the heavens were listening. Behind him, Rachel watched in silence, her eyes reflecting the firelight. She whispered softly, "He truly is Israel now, the one who wrestled with God and overcame." The camera slowly pulled back, showing the family resting under the vast, starry sky, their hearts full of peace. One quiet night, as Jacob rested near the altar, a familiar voice spoke to his heart, strong, gentle, and full of light. "Jacob," the Lord said, "go up to Bethel and live there. Build an altar to me, to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother." Jacob awoke, his eyes wide with wonder. He remembered that place, the dream of angels climbing the ladder, the promise that God would never leave him. He rose before dawn and gathered his family. "The Lord has called us to Bethel," he said. "We must prepare our hearts." At sunrise, Jacob called his family and servants together. His voice was steady but kind. "We are going to Bethel," he said. "But first, we must leave behind everything that is not of God. Give me your idols, your earrings, anything used for false worship." The people exchanged uneasy glances. Then one by one stepped forward, handing him small carvings and trinkets. Jacob buried them beneath a great oak tree, pressing his palm against the earth. "Here they will stay forever," he said, "for we serve the living God alone." His children watched silently, their young hearts learning what faith truly meant. When everything was ready, the caravan set out. The camels carried tents and supplies, and the children walked beside their mothers. Jacob led the way, leaning on his staff but walking with purpose. The road to Bethel was long, winding between rocky hills and quiet valleys. As they traveled, a strange peace covered them. The fear of enemies was gone. The Bible says, "The terror of God fell upon the cities around them, and no one pursued them." Jacob looked up to the sky and whispered, "The Lord goes before us." His limp was still there, but his steps were strong. At last they reached Bethel. The same land where Jacob had once slept with a stone for a pillow now shimmered under the afternoon sun. He felt a wave of memories. The dream of angels, the promise of God, the hope that began here long ago. He looked at his children and said, "This is the place where heaven touched earth." They gathered stones again, just as he had years before, and built an altar. Jacob lifted his hands and prayed, "O God of Bethel, you kept your promise. You have brought me home." The air grew still, and it felt as if angels once again filled the sky. As Jacob prayed, a great light surrounded him once more. The voice of God spoke gently but clearly. "Your name is Israel. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and kings shall come from you." Jacob bowed low, tears filling his eyes. He poured out a drink offering upon the altar and gave thanks. Rachel and Leah knelt beside him, their hands clasped in prayer. The children watched, their faces glowing in the light. The promise given to Abraham now lived in them. The camera slowly pulled back. The family kneeling together at Bethel, their faith shining brighter than the sun. The days after Bethel were peaceful. The family traveled south toward Ephrath, their tents moving across the quiet hills. The sky stretched wide and blue, the air full of warmth. Jacob often looked back toward Bethel, whispering thanks to the God who had guided him so far. But as they journeyed, Rachel grew weary. She pressed her hand to her belly. The time for her child had come. Jacob noticed her slowing and called out gently, "Rest, my love. We will stop here." They set up camp near a small cluster of olive trees, not knowing this day would change their hearts forever. As the sun lowered, Rachel's pain grew stronger. She gripped Jacob's hand, her breath quick and shallow. "It's time," she whispered. Jacob called for the midwife. The tent filled with the sounds of rushing and prayer. Outside, Jacob knelt in the dust, praying desperately. "O Lord, you gave me this promise. Protect her. Protect our child." The stars began to appear, one by one, as if heaven itself leaned close to listen. Inside the tent, Rachel's voice cried out, echoing through the night. More hours passed. Then, a baby's cry filled the tent, a sound of life and joy. Jacob lifted his eyes to heaven and whispered, "Thank you, Lord," but the joy mixed with sorrow. Rachel's strength was fading fast. She reached for her son with trembling hands. "His name shall be Ben-Oni," she whispered, her voice soft and weak. "The son of my sorrow." Jacob knelt beside her, tears streaming down his face. "No," he said gently. "He will be called Benjamin, son of my right hand." Rachel smiled faintly, her eyes closed as dawn broke across the horizon. Later that day, the camp was silent. Jacob carried Rachel's body to a nearby hill overlooking the road to Ephrath. The wind moved softly through the grass. His children stood quietly as he laid her to rest beneath a tall stone marker. His voice trembled as he said, "Here lies Rachel, my beloved." He placed his hand upon the stone, whispering a prayer. Though his heart was heavy, his faith did not break. He knew God's promise would live on. Through Benjamin, through Israel, through every tear and every hope. That night, Jacob sat alone by the fire, holding baby Benjamin in his arms. The child's tiny hand grasped his finger, and Jacob smiled through his tears. "The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away," he whispered, "but his promises never fail." Above him, the stars shone brighter than ever, the same stars God had once shown to Abraham. In that quiet moment, Jacob felt Rachel's love around him, like a gentle breeze. He lifted Benjamin toward the heavens and said, "You will carry her memory, and God's promise forever." Many months passed, and the road home stretched before Jacob like a ribbon of gold through the hills. He had grown quieter, his limp more pronounced, his heart more humble. His children rode beside him, their laughter rising in the wind. At night, when the stars filled the sky, Jacob would tell them stories of the ladder at Bethel, of the angel who blessed him, of God's faithful children. He would say, "God keeps his promises even when we cannot see how." The lights of Hebron finally shimmered in the distance. His father's home was near. As Jacob neared the old family tents, memories flooded back. The day he tricked Isaac, the sound of Esau's cry, his own flight into the wilderness. But this time, there was no fear. Jacob's heart was steady. A servant ran ahead to tell Isaac that his son had returned. The old man, now nearly blind, leaned on his staff, trembling with joy. My son has come home," he whispered. When Jacob entered the tent, He knelt before his father and wept. Isaac reached out, his wrinkled hand resting on Jacob's head. "Blessed be the Lord," Isaac said, "who has brought you safely back." That evening Isaac called for his grandchildren to come near. They gathered around him, 12 young faces glowing in the firelight. His voice trembled, but his words were strong. "The God of Abraham and of Jacob," he said, "will be your God. Walk with him, and he will bless you and make you strong." Jacob listened silently, tears shining in his eyes. For all his years of running, for every fear and every failure, this moment was pure grace. He looked at his sons and thought, the promise continues. In the days that followed, Isaac grew weaker. He called Jacob to his side and whispered, "My son, the Lord has been faithful to me all my life. He will be faithful to you and your sons after you." Jacob took his father's hand and nodded, his heart aching. "I will follow him, father," he said softly. Isaac smiled faintly. "Then my spirit can rest in peace." The tent was silent except for the soft flutter of its fabric in the evening breeze. Isaac closed his eyes and a gentle calm filled the air. A peace that felt like heaven itself had come down. After Isaac was buried beside Abraham and Sarah, Jacob stood alone beneath the stars. The same stars God had once shown to his grandfather now shimmered above him. His children slept peacefully in their tents, the next generation of God's promise. Jacob lifted his eyes and whispered, "You are the God of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You have kept every word." The camera slowly rose upward, showing the wide desert under the starlit sky. One man, one family, and one unbroken promise that would one day bless the whole world. Many years passed and Jacob's hair turned silver. His sons had grown strong, each leading his own family. The tents of Israel stretched far across the valley. Jacob spent his evenings beneath a fig tree, watching his grandchildren play, their laughter echoing like music. He often whispered prayers of thanks, remembering every place where God had met him. Bethel, Peniel, Ephrath, Hebron. "The Lord has been my shepherd all my days," he would say. His heart was peaceful. He had wrestled, wandered, and wept, but now he rested in grace. When Jacob felt his time growing short, he sent word for his sons. One by one they came: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Joseph, and the rest. 12 in all, the tribes of Israel. They entered their father's tent quietly, their faces solemn. Jacob looked upon them with pride. "You are my strength and the promise God gave me," he said. "The Lord will make you into a great nation." His voice was weak but steady, and his eyes shone with wisdom. Each son knelt, waiting for his father's final blessing. Words that would guide them for generations. Jacob raised a trembling hand. "Reuben," he said softly, "you are my firstborn. Judah, from you will come a ruler whose kingdom will never end. Joseph, you are a fruitful vine, blessed beyond measure." One by one, he spoke to them, his voice carrying both prophecy and love. Each son received words that would shape the future of his tribe. When he came to Benjamin, he smiled faintly and said, "You are strong and swift, my son, a beloved child." The tent was silent except for the crackle of the lamp. Heaven itself seemed to listen. Jacob's breath grew shallow. His eyes lifted toward the ceiling of the tent, as though seeing something unseen. "I am being gathered to my people," he whispered. "Bury me with my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, in the cave of Machpelah." His sons nodded, their eyes filled with tears. Jacob smiled faintly, the peace of a lifetime shining across his face. "God has been my shepherd," he said softly, "all the days of my life." With those words, Jacob, the man who once wrestled with God, fell into gentle sleep. The tent grew still, Touched with holy silence, at dawn the sons of Israel carried their father's body to the cave of Machpelah. They laid him beside Abraham and Isaac, the fathers of faith. As the morning sun rose, Joseph stood before the grave and whispered, "The God of our father will surely visit us." His brothers stood beside him, their robes fluttering in the wind. Far away, the land stretched endlessly. The land God had promised them. The story of Jacob had ended, but the story of Israel had just begun. The camera slowly lifted, showing the endless horizon glowing with light, a symbol of God's unbroken promise.